You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Hello and welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I'm Nathan Whitaker, CEO of Stimulus Technologies, and we're very excited to do something in reverse today. I am going to be interviewing Sherry Lip, our marketing manager at Stimulus Technologies. Welcome, Sherry.
Thanks, Nathan. This is gonna be fun and different.
So usually on our podcast, Sherry is interviewing me or I'm interviewing a guest, but we thought it would be fun, maybe not for Sherry, but it would be fun for me to interview her about a topic near and dear to her heart and is of interest for a lot of people today. Creating custom GPTs. Sherry, what does that mean? Creating a custom GPT.
So that means creating your own agent is the word I usually use in Chat GPT to do some stuff that you want it to do, so you can customize it. Well, that's then the word custom, but so you can you can hone it to do what you need it to do.
So isn't that just talking to a GPT, just a default one? Doesn't it learn from you? Or what makes this a little bit different than just talking to a GPT?
They will learn, but when you create a custom one, you put in a bunch of information that it will remember and that you can update, and it will be very specific for that GPT. Because when it's just learning from everything you do, it has everything that you do.
So it's very customized around a specific purpose.
Yes.
Can you, before we get into some specific examples, is it easy or hard? Where would you rate the difficulty on creating a custom GPT?
I mean, just creating one is easy. I think I'd go kind of mid-level into getting it to do what you want it to do. I mean, you have to spend some time and know really what you want to get it good.
Okay, so easy to get started, but mid-level to actually make it sing well for you. Does it require? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm sure that some very advanced people can get very advanced GPTs, but for an average maybe not as technical person, I'd say mid-level.
Yeah, but I mean, can you give us a little bit of background? What's your technical abilities generally? Do you feel, this was hard for you to do?
I didn't find it hard for me to do. I'd say I've always been kind of technical oriented without being a techie or more on your level, or the techs who work for Stimulus. But I have always been a computer oriented person. I've worked in other technical jobs, and I've always had to use technology in work. So for me, I found it to be pretty easy and intuitive to learn.
So you don't have to be a programmer or a technical expert.
And I am not a programmer since my high school computer programming class.
Okay. All right, great. So let's talk about maybe some use cases. So you're our marketing manager at Stimulus Technologies. Why did you decide to create custom GPTs as a marketer?
I think I got started with it to get something that would learn what our target client profile was, which we of course have taught some others to do in a recent webinar. But to get it to always remember I created a profile that was how I got started. I created a profile for a certain specific target that we were looking at. And I wanted it to always remember, like, how do we write to this person? What are this person's needs and wants and pain points? And, what do they like as a person? And what kind of marketing would they respond to?
So this is kind of like, we've talked about a buyer persona, right? We even give these buyers a name, don't we? Or the writer the name? Yeah.
So it'll be like, Mark Hunter, and and we'll give him an age, and usually I will pick the profession, But you can also go broad and just say a business owner or whatever somebody's target is, and it will give them a name and age. It will talk about what their life might be like. Are they a religious person? Are they not religious? Where do they live? What do they like to do? Maybe what kind of social organizations do they belong to? Where do they shop and all those kinds of things.
Okay. So it's actually kind of fun creating this because you're inventing a fictional character that relates to somebody that we would interact with on a professional basis.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like a video game avatar in a way. You don't get to play a video game, but you do get to create the person.
Okay. So in marketing, what are some of the tasks that you're using these custom GPTs to do?
So I will have them. A lot of times I use it to come up with ideas. So I'll be like, what kind of things will this person respond to, and then I can build blog posts, and then social media, and then coming up with ideas for webinars, and it's just anything that we want to do to get their attention.
So it's almost brainstorming with a customer or market research.
Yeah, yeah, and that is the good thing about it, because you can go back and forth on it, and it gives you, when you create it, the way I created it at least, it gives you like their emotional triggers, like how they might respond to something emotionally and how they might respond to something logically, and so you can build different things around that too.
Oh, interesting. So a computer can be emotional.
It certainly pretends to be. It seems to know the emotions uh, of people, and so it can, and that's kind of the weird part as you get more into it, is that it will start responding to you as if it's a person.
Yeah, we've talked on this show about sometimes AI gets confused and thinks it is a real person, and will get mad at you if you call it AI. So it's
Yeah.
kind of funny. So if someone wanted to get started in building their custom GPT, that talks of what we've been talking about, their brand voice, what type of content should you upload or include in creating this custom GPT?
So for creating the one I've been talking about, where you're having it help you create stuff for a particular buyer, he created a what we called like a brand script. So we talked about what is unique about stimulus, and then we started thinking about like what are these customers pain points, and you can have the chat gpt help you figure out those too, but then you're going to put them all together into this brand script.
Well, that's
But
interesting because
yeah.
I know we've done this in the past, and it's kind of fun. Just as an aside, is you can ask ChatGPT to ask you questions
Mhm.
rather than having to come up with it all yourself. You say, "I want to produce a brand script. What questions do I need to answer? How can I get this?" And so, don't just think you have to write this novel for ChatGPT. Ask it to interview you.
Yeah, and that's the good thing about it, because what you're really trying to do is get yourself in there, or your brand. And because you don't want, otherwise you're just going to have generic content. We've all seen that from AI, where it kind of writes the same thing. So what you're just using, you're kind of using as a sounding board that's going to learn, and it will give you more of what you want. So if you ask it to ask you questions, that will get you thinking about how you want to answer those questions that you might not have thought of as you're trying to write this out.
Okay, and what other tips or maybe some common mistakes that people make when creating their own GPTs, or just in general creating these customized interactions with this large language model?
I think it's that you're not getting enough detail in there, or not asking it for enough detail, so you're being very generic. So if you ever just tried like write me a social media post on whatever, on making pancakes, it will do one, it'll be fine, but it won't be very interesting. It won't have anything to do with you. You might want to be like, well, here's my grandmother's recipe, and this is why I grew up making this, and then you're going to get more stuff out of it, that's like on the personal side. And you can do the same with business. So we're talking about our business, so I upload our brand script, I uploaded our, some stuff from our website, especially like the why choose us and those elements to really hone it to us. So I think the biggest mistakes are being too general as far as creation, and then also making sure that you are telling it to not make stuff up, because you do have to tell it that, because if you're having it do something, it will fill in whole. Like if it's like a testimonial would be great here, it might write one that's not real. Like it's like maybe it's an example, but it just looks like it wrote something. So you have to check that stuff, or you have to say don't put anything in that's not real.
Yeah, we've talked about that a number of times, that it will make up statistics, make up quotes, bring in information that is maybe correct information, but it's compiled, like it's doing a research study and compiles the information, but it might not be 100% accurate. So no matter what you're doing, I think that's a good, important lesson to remember in all interactions with generative AI, is to check the work and make sure that it's, what you want it to produce, because it will bring in things that are incorrect. It's not perfect, just like humans aren't perfect. It's certainly not perfect. So
Yeah, I try to ask it questions that I know the answers to, and then see if it comes up with something incorrect, and then I will correct it, because that it will learn from that kind of thing. But if it's giving statistics, I usually look those up, but now they have now there's like some deep research and stuff in there where you can ask it to pull the source.
yeah, and I think that's really important, is to ask for the source material. And if it can't provide a source that is a legitimate source, then don't use the information. So let's talk about, like a first project. If somebody wants to get started, do they need to have, specific version of ChatGPT or other, type of generative AI solution? And, what's a good first project for them?
I think you can get some of this going. You can't create the custom GPTs, I don't believe, without a subscription. Paid version of Chat GPT. So you would want that. You can get some of this going, like we said, without creating the custom GPTs, if you want to try to, within a single chat, start playing around with like, here's a bio profile that, help me create one, and now help me write some. I would say start off with like maybe writing some social media posts or something if you're trying to do some marketing, geared towards this person, and see what you think. But as far as like, creating those ones that are for, very detailed, where you're actually, editing a customized GPT, you need the paid version of Chat GPT.
And they're not that expensive. It's what, $30 per user per month for the team subscription. And for data security, I think it's important, especially if you're creating all this custom content and you're uploading a lot of, I'd consider confidential or proprietary information about the company. From a data privacy standpoint, it's really important that you're paying for it, and ChatGPT will, or most other generative AI with the paid models, will keep your interactions private. So
Yeah,
I think it's
that's a definite.
yeah, it's a good and important note. So what's a use case that, a business owner or a marketing manager or an executive might create a custom GPT to do?
I think if you are going to, you might want to create a very specific GPT if you have a niche in your business for a specific industry or something like that. You want to create that, and then if you want to create a marketing campaign around that, I think that's a very good use. Where you're creating the full big picture, maybe a multiple touch campaign, where you are like, okay, where you're really figuring out what kinds of wording and stuff that your potential buyer will respond to, you can create, a letter, you can create your social media, and you can create blog posts, and it will all be centered around the one thing.
And I think that's an interesting note because how you would communicate with a buyer, not just in an industry, but geographically would be different. If you're a company that is outside of one city, you're multi-state, multi-location, or maybe even international, having different GPTs for different industries, but also different geolocations is really important because bringing in content or examples from California is going to be very different than from New York City, and talking to the buyers and the language that's used in those diverse locations, or let's say Georgia or Minnesota, is going to be very different than these coastal locations. So it's interesting. We're in process of doing this to really hone these messages to the specific buyer, and thinking about the target, not just industry, but company size or person and geography and language.
Yeah, I think that's really important, especially when you are, trying to think about the way people are responding. I think I had a lesson in that, and many years ago before AI, but I worked for an international company, and I didn't do it, but I was on an email where somebody made a joke, and it did not go over well with somebody overseas because it didn't. It sounded offensive to them. They didn't realize it was a joke. And I think that that can, especially, dealing internationally, you could really have AI help you with, like, is this appropriate? What kinds of things might not work, here that you might joke about, but that could be true between here and Dallas, Texas, or wherever, that joking and the way you present things is very different.
So, as a employee of Stimulus Technologies, do you feel like this is going to replace your job?
I don't feel like that's going to happen, but I know that's a big fear. I think that you need somebody behind it, like I'm talking about, really knowing the company and, like, knowing Stimulus, and having marketing ideas. I feel like I still have to have a lot of marketing ideas to get this to be good. I think that somebody who's a very small business owner probably could do a lot of this themselves. So, it's an interesting time because certainly there could be less jobs, but I'm not sitting here feeling like this is going to take my job away, because then you or somebody else would still have to do everything I'm doing.
Yeah, it's definitely I think, is from an executive standpoint, it's a job enhancer for your teams than a job replacement. And as with any tool, it may end up limiting the team size because it enhances capabilities so much. I think I would say, Sherry, and you can comment on this, do we need a content writer, separate from you, now that we have AI that's doing a lot of this work? We may or may not have hired a content writer, for example, but it sure makes it a lot easier on you as a marketing manager to do that work.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is still a great value in good writing, but I've always considered myself, a content creator, and I feel like this does enhance what I do. Well, it doesn't supplant it. It doesn't, because I feel like you still need to have somebody who's got ideas, who can see. GPT does not just come up with great ideas on its own. In fact, they can be pretty poor if you're not managing it. So I think that there's always going to be, it doesn't take away creativity, and it doesn't take away that human knowing what, I look at something that comes up with and I'm like, that's not good at all. That's kind of sounds dumb, or that's not going to, that wouldn't land with me. So it's probably not going to land with another person.
And I think there's some authenticity that comes with stories. I one of the things that I tried to do in writing the CEO's Digital Survival Guide is incorporate stories from my life that might be interesting to other business executives and relate those to technology. And certainly ChatGPT can invent stories, but they're just invented and they're based off of maybe other um, examples from history or other books or things like that. But it's not novel to your life or your business or how you're going to relate to your clients or customers or prospects. So I think that's the other thing that is really missing is a story side
Yeah,
of
I think,
marketing.
yeah, I agree. Stories are like, I think, the biggest attention getter in any type of, not just marketing, but just any type of content out there. That's what people kind of gravitate to because they want to know what happened or they want to relate to it or it's just interesting.
Yeah, just example on this. I was at a meeting the other day, and the speaker on cybersecurity was head IT manager at a large multinational corporation um, that was breached, and he shared his experience, a very emotional story because the breach occurred before he was hired. And it had lingered in the company for a while before they executed, but it was executed on his watch. And he ended up, losing his job over this, and it really changed who he was. And it, presented an emotional story for those in the room of this experience of why he's continued on to advocate for strong cybersecurity because his livelihood and life was affected by this dramatic event that occurred under his watch. And those type of stories, from a human standpoint, you'll only get by talking to another person. And so I think that's incumbent on us as business leaders, as executives, as all the team members inside the company to really make whatever content you have personal. Now, what ChatGPT can do though is take those stories and really do weave those into the content and make them sound better or better spoken, better related, things like that. I don't know if you've had examples of doing that using stories and when creating these GPTs of incorporating that.
Yeah, so I think using a story, yeah, you can put it in there. You can kind of tell Chat GPT the story and like have it help you craft that into your what you're trying to create. I think that the more you can tell it, the custom GPTs, you are trying to humanize what you're creating by putting all those details in there. And so yeah,
Okay.
you want to keep that human touch, and I just find it more it can be helpful. It can be helpful in getting you from your beginning to your end point faster. But it's not going to just if you just let it do it for you, it's not going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and I think people are becoming more and more aware of what content is just baseline created by these GPTs, whether it's ChatGPT. I was on another podcast earlier, and I was guesting on it, and the podcast host mentioned an example where he was talking to a company, and they said, they had interviewed a couple of quote unquote AI experts, and they said, it was very interesting talking to these AI experts. It sounded like I was talking to ChatGPT. Their responses were very GPT-ish. So
Yeah,
I think it's really important because, in content online, in emails, I think it's starting to become pretty obvious what's 100% created by scratch from ChatGPT. So you got to be really careful about customizing it. And that's what we're talking about here is
yeah,
making this content very personal. And it's just basically taking what you would produce and making it better, correct.
yeah.
It's
Make it
like a good
better.
editor.
Yeah, editor, getting to it faster. Sometimes I'm like, maybe it's too polished. Maybe I should kind of go back to my, it's not little more sloppy. But I was at a hockey game not too long ago, and they had a commercial during the break where it was a cybersecurity focused commercial, and it started with in today's, ever changing digital landscape. And I leaned over to my husband and I was like, they had ChatGPT write this commercial. He's like, oh, they did. And I'm like, yeah, because that line is like the first line that it always produces.
Was there a rocket ship at the beginning of it
No, there's
too?
no rocket ship. They must have got that out of there.
Edited it out. Was there a lot of bolding throughout the commercial? Yeah, there's
Yeah.
like obvious telltale signs when somebody copies and pastes. There's too many
Mhm.
little emojis, especially the rocket ship and the check marks. I don't know why it likes those so much. And then
Yeah.
random words are bolded, and it likes doing that too, for sure.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to start building GPT, a custom GPT today, what's the first thing that you'd recommend that they do?
So I would recommend that well, the first thing you have to do is figure out what you want your GPT to do. And like I have GPT where you wanted to do something. So we're talking about creating our target profile, but that's not actually the GPT. That's what you created as your profile that you could save in there, but that's not the GPT. So the GPT is creating a ghostwriter based on that profile. So you can have it be as honed as you want it to be, ghostwriter for. You can have it just be social media for this type of client or this location or whatever. And so the first thing you're going to do is you want to figure out your target profile, and then you want to figure out what you want your GPT to do, and you want to know what's unique about your company. Like we said earlier, you can have ChatGPT help you with all those things, and then you're going to create your GPT, tell it what you want it to do, have it create this persona, and then you'll create the ghostwriter. It's a little bit of a process, but if you really want something good like that, I think a starter is that I think the first one I ever created, I didn't go through all of those steps. I just said, we have a buyer profile. I want to, make sure this writer knows what that is and is gearing everything towards that. And so I uploaded, our company bio and USP and, this buyer persona that I had created. And it was a very simple one.
So are there some resources that you would recommend, or maybe favorite prompts or tools to help you through this process, and as you've learned more about using these generative AI systems that have really helped you along the way?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, I mean, I've worked, worked with some where, looked up prompts and, found prompts for marketing. But ChatGPT will also help you create prompts. So I think that's actually a good way because it can word it in a way that it knows it will understand. So that can actually be very helpful. But I've also just researched online, or talked with other marketers. What kind of prompts do you use, and then I will tailor them for how I want them.
And you belong to like a marketing manager's mastermind that's helped you with this, right?
Right. Yeah. So the mastermind is really we're very focused on AI. So we've created all kinds of prompts. I've got a whole folder of AI prompts.
And I'll use this as a pitch for Stimulus. We have a mastermind group because I think that's really important from a training perspective, is to have a group of individuals that are focused on a certain outcome. And we have a mastermind group to help you with Microsoft Copilot, which is a great business tool to integrate with the Microsoft Office suite to use generative AI to create a lot of content. So if you're interested in a mastermind group to help you with, just general business use of Microsoft Copilot, Stimulus is offering that for companies today, and we've had a lot of good success with that. So, but I think that's been, as I've watched you, Sherry, expand from the first day that we got into ChatGPT a few years ago to today, that mastermind group has certainly helped you out a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely there's like so much you can put in there. But yeah, to get started, you can just develop some simple tools and start working with it to get it to what you want to help you do.
All right. Any last thoughts as we wrap up?
Um yeah, I guess it's just, keep that human side and work with it that way, work with it to help you get yourself out of, into what you're writing.
Great. Well, Sherry, thank you. Thank you for switching seats with me today. It's kind of fun being the interviewer rather than the interviewee. Uh, so I appreciate everybody joining today for Stimulus Tech Talk, where we explore different ideas and different concepts to help you implement the best technology inside your business. So thank you all for joining us today.